Hello, everyone. Hope you've had an amazing day so far and enjoyed looking at our beautiful campus. My name is Priya. I'm an advanced master's student here at ANU, and I'm doing my master's in quantitative biology and bioinformatics. So the next session will be presented by Dr. Andrew Carr, and he will tell us all about studying the Bachelor of International Security Studies. So give it up for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Welcome. My name is Andrew Carr, and I have the privilege to speak to you today about the Bachelor of International Security Studies. I want to begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people on whose land we meet and paying my respects to their elders past and present. Given the size of the audience here, as well as we have people kind of live streaming in, for questions and answers, which I'm hopeful we'll have time for a couple of, if you go on your phone to slido.com and enter the code you can see there on screen, 1534772, you'll be able to write some questions in, and at the end of this session, I'll hopefully be able to get to them. So, I've been asked today to speak about a very kind of simple question. Look, this is an important question. I get it. But when you walked in this door, you already knew why international security is important. You don't need me, particularly on a hot afternoon after lunch, droning on about why we should be thinking about the world around us, about the security threats. You already know. We have a war in Europe. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, a conflict that is sapping the military supplies from around the world, drawing in the United States, NATO, increasingly China, a war that has potentially vast ramifications and has certainly already affected many of us here in safe old Canberra by the impact on the global supplies of logistics, of fuel and security. We have the problems of climate change, with natural disasters, floods and fires, sea levels rising, people unable to provide for themselves, who get desperate and hungry and have to move, the pressure on international logistics supplies, on their political systems that they rely on and that sustain them because of these climate pressures. And then we have the potential crises as well. For its 100th birthday coming up in 2049, the Chinese Communist Party has decided it would like the president of Taiwan. This is a potential conflict that could draw in the United States, Japan, Australia, a potential conflict that not only affects the 23 million people of Taiwan with their lives, but if it turned nuclear, and it really could, potentially the fate of humanity itself. And of course, we have the millions who are fleeing these disasters, fleeing these conflict zones, the refugees and asylum seekers, a particular challenge here in Southeast Asia as the sea levels rise. And of course, you have muppets like this guy. So, you already know why studying international security is important. And my question for you is, what are you going to do about it? Now, I get it. One of the reasons why people come to university is because in the Australian system, we make you come to university. Very good for our bankline. But we say you need this piece of paper if you ought to then go on and get a career and go on and just kind of live the life you want to live. And that's perfectly fine. If you want to come to university to get that degree so that you can go and make some money, buy a house with a nice view, and acquire some nice stuff, perfectly fine by me. Perfectly fine. You should not be criticized for that decision. And hopefully no one ever will criticize you for that decision. But you'll know. Late at night, deep down, you'll know whether you have special talents, skills that could be applied to some of these big problems. Some of the problems that we are facing today are more complex, are more ethically fraught than humanity has ever had to face. And if you can help, then I think Australia right now needs your help. When Australia was invaded in 1788, it was the start of a growing period of Western dominance in Asia. That is the entire world that modern Australia post-invasion has ever known. And that Western dominance brought with it many harms in the form of colonialism and devastation. But it also brought with it the modern welfare state, democracy, and the international institutions and rule of law that we now appreciate and believe our security depends on. And all of that is under stress. All of that is potentially going away. We're seeing the rise of different powers, different functions, and systems of government with China. We are seeing the effects of climate change driving a potentially radically different environment in which we might live. We're seeing the rise of startling new technology, such as artificial intelligence, that may not even change just what the rules are, but who makes the rules. And right now, I'm not sure Australia is sending its best people. At least I think it's Albanese under there. So if you think that you have something to contribute to these problems, then the Bachelor of International Security Studies at the Australian National University is a place where you can begin that journey. Maybe you will join your colleagues and your classmates and graduate into a job at the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, at the Department of Defence, or into the intelligence communities who are rapidly trying to hire as many people as they possibly can in order to understand this changing world. And many of our graduates go on to significant roles, shaping government strategy, analysing international events, being Australia's eyes and ears around the world. Indeed, the current Secretary of the Department of Defence, Greg Moriarty, is an alumni of our programs. Or maybe you'll take your talents to the private sector. With the pandemic, with the US-China tariff wars, many international companies, almost all of them, have come to realise they need people who can understand international security. They need to know what's going on in Ukraine. They need to know what the US is going to pass in terms of its congressional laws that might affect fuel security, the flow of food, the flow of access to technology. You might take your skills to a private company like Qantas. Qantas needs to know what's going on in Ukraine. It needs to know whether peace is going to hold in North Ethiopia or in the Congo, not only for the safety of its crew and its flights and its passengers, but for the effect on its fuel, the effect on its access to airline parts. And so this is increasingly an important market for our graduates. Or perhaps you want to take your talents down onto the ground to help people who are dealing with the effects of insecurity, of climate change, and to help rebuild their communities, giving opportunities for their children and for improving and stabilising their way of life through the skills and the broader political knowledge that you've gained through a degree like this. Now, I'm sure today you've already sat through a number of presentations that have promised you the world. I'm sure if you go to open days at other universities, and I encourage you to do so, we have a fantastic tertiary sector here in Australia. If you go to other universities and listen to their presentations, they will promise you that you will come out as this perfect graduate with a very specific set of skills. And part of why they do that is because when it comes to international relations, international security, they might only have 5 or 10 courses that they can offer you, and they make you take them all. But I don't think that one-size-fits-all model makes sense. Not when you think about the diversity of our students who are coming into the university, not when you think about the diversity of our students about where they might go after university. Because the narrow model that you find at other institutions really only makes sense if you already know exactly who you are and what your contribution could be. And maybe you do. Maybe you're lucky enough to already have that idea. But most people come, particularly most young people, come to university not just to study the world out there, but the one in here. Many can learn about the world and understand it and take the time to really study it. But if you want to make a contribution to the world, if you want to align your specific skill sets to something that is important and that matters to thousands or millions or billions of people, then you have a really important task. Because if you are to make that authentic contribution, then you need first to become who you are, to do what only you can do. Now, I don't know what the right career for you is. And I think many of you are wanting to come to university because you don't know either. And I think that's a great starting point. I think that's a really important place to begin. And we've designed the Bachelor of International Security Studies not simply to take you down one very specific path, but to give you that foundation and opportunity to work out what path is right for you. Because only once you know who you are can the how and the where of your contribution really come to the fore and really make sense. And we design it in this broad way because at the Australian National University, we don't just have 5 or 10 courses on international security, we have literally hundreds of them. And we have them taught by some of the best scholars in the world, particularly scholars here of Asia and the Pacific. Let me show you. We start in the bachelor's with 4 courses that are just about how to think about the world, giving you a basic empirical foundation and understanding of what do some of these big terms and ideas mean, and what do they mean particularly for the fate and future of Australia. And then we go on and say, choose an area of specialty on Asia-Pacific security, on global security, on non-traditional security, for instance, and start to build out that expertise so that you can go to future employers and say, I understand international security. And within each of these, for instance, we could look at Asia-Pacific security or non-traditional security options here. You can pick a long list of courses to specialize in, or you can simply jump from course to course across broad areas, discovering and learning about parts of the world that you've never had a chance to know about before. And then after that initial core, the 4 courses plus a kind of focused area of security, you now have a scaffolding in which you make the bins your own. No 2 students graduate the Bachelor of International Security Studies by studying the same courses, because that doesn't make sense for where they might be going or where they want to go in life. They make it their own. Perhaps you'll study a language and you'll be able to start to speak to the rest of the world. You'll be able to read what they read and think and start to understand them by talking to them on the ground. Critical, foundational skills. And you can have that vast range of expertise available here at ANU. Or maybe you want to build up your knowledge by focusing on a part of the world like Latin America or the Middle East. Maybe you want to look into the role of technology in security, really try to understand how are robots and artificial intelligence changing the way that militaries might fight. Or perhaps just to take the time to study some philosophy, to look at contemporary society and to ask, why in a world of so many problems do we first reach for the gun, reach for giant submarines as our response to these problems? What is it about our mindsets and our perceptions that lead us to this view and this focus on security at the cost of everything else that is so important in the world today? You might choose an area such as peace and conflict studies to work on human rights, diplomacy, challenging the threat of genocide, improving the role of international law to be able to bring people to justice. So, when you walked in this door, you already knew why international security was worth your time to study. You already know by the fact that you are here today why ANU is the best place this side of the world, one of the best places in the world, in order to study these issues. So I can only ask, in a world beset by problems, what are you going to do about it? And I can only hope that as the years go by, when you look in the mirror, you will like the reflection staring back to you. That's it for my presentation. If there are questions, I'd now be happy to respond to them. Actually, Priya, can I get you to read these out? That might just make a bit more sense. And if you can kind of keep an idea on the time. So just, thanks.
So the first question is, can I combine the bins with another degree?
Excellent. Yes, so around 70% of our BIN students take a second degree. Now, taking a second degree, such as law or business or arts or science, will limit some of the electives and some of the extra choices you might have, but it is an incredibly popular option. If you go onto the Programs and Courses website, if you can see the link up there, it actually has a degree builder, very nifty system that will allow you to see just what such a degree would look like. So it certainly is very possible. And as I said, around 70% of our students do combine it with a second degree.
Okay. The second question is, given we are in Canberra, what kind of interaction do you have with government in this course?
It is one of the great advantages being at the Australian National University. Just the other day, I hosted a luncheon with some of our students with Gareth Evans, the former Foreign Minister of Australia, former President of the International Crisis Group, still a significant figure in the Australian debate. In a couple of weeks' time, we're hopefully going to have the Secretary of Defence, Greg Moriarty, coming and addressing our courses, and that's pretty regular. For a lot of our courses, we do bring in figures in government, former and current, to talk to students, to kind of explain how they see the world and give you a chance to ask questions of them. So it is one of the real advantages we have here.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, how can this degree aid a career in foreign diplomacy?
Okay. So when I wanted to study these issues a long time ago, and I came to events like this, and they said, who wants to go and work for Foreign Affairs and Trade? And virtually every hand went up, including mine. I didn't quite make it. But now, actually, it's funny to see that the focus is changing. A lot more interested in the world of intelligence studies, in defence, but many of our graduates do go on to Foreign Affairs and Trade. And we speak to government a lot about how do we make sure our graduates are the right fit for them. And unfortunately, there is no cookie cutter answer. There's no path of do these 9 courses and DFAT will want to hire you. I wish it was that easy. We would redesign our courses to fit that. Instead, what we find from government, particularly from Foreign Affairs and Trade, is that they want well-rounded people. They want people who are absolutely sure after their time at university that they know exactly why they want to be a diplomat. It's not just an ambition or an idea, it's something that they firmly believe. And so that's part of why I've tried to make this BINS degree so open and broad, because it gives you that chance to go on exchanges, to learn languages, to really find out who you are. And if at the end of it you can say to DFAT, I absolutely want to be a diplomat, I've gone on this path, this is why I want to be it, you can tell a story that they will find really persuasive. So it's that ability to tell a story more than perhaps even just getting really good marks that is often what will appeal to them when they hire, we find.
How well would this degree pair with a law degree in terms of employment?
Look, I think you do really well. When I was going to university, if you wanted to be a bright young thing and just get a bit of paper that said, hey, I'm a bright young thing, you did a law degree. Now, the world has changed. I'm very thankful for that. I didn't really do very well when I studied law. But the world has changed, and so now degrees like this can kind of play that role for a lot of employers. But I think a lot of what the issues that I've been talking about do really pair with questions of law. If you are going to be a consultant, work for KPMG or PricewaterhouseCoopers, all those big companies that often hire a lot of our graduates, then a knowledge of law and the way that the Australian government actually tries to implement and practice in some of these areas can actually be really important. If you wanted to go work for the Attorney General's Department or Home Security, you would be able to kind of meaningfully combine a law and a BINS degree. So I see a lot of overlap there.
What are the main differences between the Bachelor of International Security and the Bachelor of International Relations?
Excellent question. We get this one a lot. part of why we are able to offer a Bachelor of International Security here at ANU is because we just have enough academics and senior scholars to be able to really draw out some of these distinctions. At a lot of universities, you just do a Bachelor of International Relations and it has some security courses within it. I think the best way to understand the difference is that for the bins, we're a little bit more focused on the real world, on the kind of practical applications, the kind of future and contemporary crises that are coming through. And international relations is a bit more of a kind of historically grounded and theoretical approach. Particularly the leading edge of IR scholarship these days is often quite tied to philosophy and ethics and the kind of broader sense of, how do we relate to others in the world? What kinds of relations should we have? Whereas we'll do courses that are a bit more that are, okay, what's going on with Taiwan and how do we understand these issues and how might we prevent it from spiraling into a conflict? So that's kind of where I put the focus. You can have a look again on programs and courses on the specific course, and certainly within the bins, you're able to take a range of IR courses as the foundation of your degree as well.
Does it offer an international exchange program for internships in another country?
Yes, so advantage of ANU is that we have a significant exchange programs signed with a number of international universities. So you can go over and spend 6 months in Tokyo or Seoul or Washington or London and to do courses there that will count for your studies back here. You can also do internships here through the ANIP program, going into think tanks, going into the private sector and getting a sense of how they approach those worlds. And in fact, this hasn't yet kind of come through onto programs and courses, but ANU takes this idea of student experience really, really seriously. And they are really pushing for this to be something that every student will do. So certainly by the end of your time here, it's going to be almost the expectation that you would do some kind of an experience effort. And because that's a real priority for what this current Vice Chancellor is wanting to do.
Can you combine this degree with other degrees, and are the classes blended, hybrid, or entirely face-to-face?
So we've spent the last few years obviously doing a lot of online, a lot of hybrid courses. The current Vice-Chancellor would like us to move back to in-person teaching, and that's the kind of broad basis for certainly from next semester onwards. There will be some courses that can be taught and taken in a hybrid fashion, but likely ANU will be virtually all face-to-face for the foreseeable future. And that's just because we believe that that's the right way to teach, the right way to learn. In my classes, I do a lot of problem-based learning. So I don't stand up and just lecture to the students, send them to sleep. I give them a challenge. I say, all right, you are working for the South Korean government, and now you want to try and find a new way to think about the North Korean problem, and assign you different responsibilities. I give you different resources, and you go away in groups to try and figure out this challenge and try to think your way around how might we address these international security concerns. So really trying to shift that responsibility and some of that opportunity to you, because when you go and work for DFAT, that's the kind of problem you might be tasked with. How do we actually think about these challenges? So we want to try and give you those real-world skills by having that experience, and that really only works, we find, face-to-face.
This will be the last question. Are you able to do a major in something else, or a language, or just a minor?
So you don't have to take languages, you don't have to complete majors. You do have to do a number of security courses, but you can choose from one course on Asia and one course on the Middle East and one course on the US and one course on human rights and asylum seekers. And that's perfectly fine. The majors are there for you to be able to build an area of expertise, to be able to tell a story to a future employer. Hey, look, I have a specialty, I have an area of focus. But if you want to just pick and match and see what's interesting, then I think that's fantastic. In fact, the advice I always give to students is, go and study something that you have never heard of before. Go and learn about a place in the world that you have never been to or never read about in the world. And the worst that comes out of it is you spend 6 months, you've learned about it, and you go, yeah, that wasn't for me. I've done some philosophy, that's not great. I've done some sociology, it's kind of interesting, but that wasn't for me. But maybe you'll discover a passion that you didn't know you had. Maybe you'll discover something that just clicks for you, that says, yes, that's what I kind of can contribute in the world. And that's something I think is just as important as that core security foundation. So that's why we designed that degree in this way.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Carr, for telling our young minds the importance of studying security studies at ANU.
Thank you all very much. And I'm happy to answer some questions privately off to the side after this session. Thank you.
Yes. For people who are interested in attending the next session, please remain seated. If not, the exits are towards my left. And have a good day.